Hello, everyone. Welcome to an all new episode of the Indic Explorer Show podcast. This is your host, Vineet. And please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. अब जब हम गोवा के बारे में सुनते हैं तो हमें हमेशा यही दिमाग में आता है कि बीचेस, पार्टीज, अल्कोहल, booze, drugs, and freedom unlimited. And that very famous uncle of Goa who walks around with a hat and polka dot shirt and shorts. तो यही हमेशा एक स्टीरियोटाइप रहा है गोवा का. So today I have a very interesting guest who is going to help, who is from Goa and who's going to help bust some of those very well-known myths about Goa. And we will also, after that, discuss and delve deeper into the history of Goa, especially the pre Portuguese history, which is much less known, and as well as a very important and a serious topic that needs to come to light, which is the Goan Inquisition under Portugal. So we have a lot of ground to cover. So with me, I have today, welcome to the show, Sawani Shete.
Namaste. I'm glad to have this and to help to reach out many people to bust this myth about Goa that people usually think of.
Yeah, absolutely. And to give some context, Savni is a professional archaeologist, and she's does a lot of excavations and digs in Goa, in some of the sites in Goa. So expect some very authentic discussion on that as well. So, firstly, Savni, I was talking about this popular modern image of Goa that is floating around. तो इसके बारे में आपका क्या कहना है?
A lot of times, what happens when people come to Goa, it's a tourism driven state, right? So one tourist sees another tourist and think they have seen the local. And that is where they form like an inference about Goa, but it's actually they're saying one tourist is seeing another. I mean, what clothes, the lifestyle that they see on a seaside, beachside, is what the tourists do. We can't really afford to do that every day. I mean, it's really been some time I've been to seaside because work keeps us busy, right? So it's the same thing. I mean, there's a different side which has the local people, and there's one side, the coastal, and where you usually see tourists. So, if you go a little in hinterlands of Goa, you get to see the real culture of Goa, which is very authentic and raw, and which is exactly same as other parts of India as well. So a lot of people think Goa is just an extension of Portuguese or it has only the Portuguese identity. And people usually ask us, can we meet any Portuguese? All that. So people, a lot of times we think it's a foreign trip on Indian rupees. But it's not that. We are as Indian and our culture is as Sanatan as other rest of India.
Okay, so very interesting. You mentioned that it is as Sanatan as the rest of India. So, how about uh, talk about, because Sanatan Dharma is really defined by its sacred geography. So, where does Goa fit into that larger sacred geography? Are there any stories in the epics which are from Goa? I think it was called Gomantak before. So, uh, can you talk a little bit about the temples and stuff like that? So,
So, Goa is also part of the larger Bharatvarsha that we know culturally. Then, secondly, the part of Konkan, which starts from Ratnagiri and goes right till even some parts of Kerala, was known as Aparant or Sunaparant. Aparant is the tip, like the western coast. That is also known as Aparant. And Sunaparant means the golden Aparant because it is a really prosperous region, right from the whole of Konkan in Maharashtra to Goa, Karnataka, and even Kerala. It's a prosperous in terms of nature, like all the green and harvest and all that. So this kind of a story you find in other parts of Konkan as well, like Ratnagiri, Goa, Mangalore, and even Kerala to a certain extent, where it is believed that Parshuram, who was the sixth incarnation of Vishnu, shot an arrow and then Goa was formed. There's a belief that sea retreated back. And I was recently reading one article where there have been excavations in Ratnagiri area or the Western Ghats, And in the ghats they have found fossils or remains, the remains of ecofacts, which are ecological things or biological remains of creatures or animals or any fauna that we would get only in the sea area. So there is definitely some retreat that has happened. The sea has actually gone back. Also, we find some plants here which were part of the Gondwana land. There are myristica swamps in Goa, which are part of the larger Gondwana land, which is that's how it's considered. So there is some retreat or some kind of geographical activity has happened. So of course we have to get into much detail to know when exactly this happened and all that. But we there's a mention of Goa in about the Parshuram story, the Bhagwan Parshuram creation. Then it is also believed that along with him he got the Saraswat Brahmin from Gaud Desh, which is today's Bengal. And interestingly, we do find a lot of similarities in Bengali culture. Even the language is somewhat similar. Also, there are deities. I will come to that in a little later time. We have temple deities where there's Thara Mahatmya, which is the sacred geography, speaks about, say, Kamakshi is original form of Kamakhya. So there is belief that there were two Brahmins who got her from Assam till Goa. So there is some kind of migration that has happened. So it's not, as people would like to call it, a myth. It's not a myth in totality. So there is some clues here and there. Of course, we have to find more details to know about it. That is one. Then we get reference of Goa in Mahabharat. It is mentioned as the Gomanchal Parvat, which was also the name of Goa. We have mentions in the Skanda Puran. There is a one chapter called a Sahyadri Khanda. Sahyadri is the name for the Western Ghats, and it mentions about the temples of Goa, and most of the temples are still existing. So Goa also has lot of literary resources which are connected to our Puranas, our Itihas, and larger Indian ethos.
So, my question here is the name I think goes God Saraswat, right? So, is there any link? So, you said God is linked with Bengal and Saraswat is linked with Saraswati Sindhu. So, it's actually both sides. So, what? How does that
Yeah.
fit in? Like,
There has a lot of research is going on about the Sindhu Saraswati civilization. Okay, so we always knew it as the Sindhu civilization or the Indus Valley. Parallel to that was Saraswati River. And now we have enough of geographical as well as archaeological, literary, a lot from 360 aspects. We have resources to prove that the Saraswati River did exist. And there is a claim, there's a, a lot of archaeologists are now calling the Indus Valley civilization as the Sindhu Saraswati Sabhyata, and not only Sindhu. And it's a story that I grew up with, and now I found that in many other reference books also. It is said that the Saraswat Brahmins were originally on the banks of river Saraswati. So they are putras of Saraswati. That's why Saraswat. And it was believed that there is some famine or something happened, and they found some difficulties in getting good grains and all those things. So and they wanted to migrate, but their Vedabhyas was continuously happening. So river Saraswati, the Devi Saraswati, came out from the river and said, "You are my, uh, putra. So I will give you my fruits or my food. That is the fish." So that is one reason the Saraswat Brahmins of Goa, though they are Brahmins, we eat fish. Of course, if anybody is a technical Purohit, then they give up on fish and any non-veg if they are practicing in a temple. That is obviously, but Saraswat Brahmins at large, we do eat fish. And we actually swear by our fish. So that is one. And this similarity you even see in Bengal. They also swear by their fish. So it is believed migrations due to natural resources, natural reasons as well as other reasons. It happened right from Saraswati River. Some went to Kashmir, which was also the Sharda Peeth. And then from Kashmir it went to Bihar and banks of Ganga, right up to Bengal. And from Bengal there is belief that migration has happened to Goa and parts of Konkan.
Okay, and let's talk about the from the point of view of the Hindu epics you mentioned about Parashurama, but some of the big Hindu temples in Goa, of course, a lot of them had gotten destroyed during the Portuguese period. But any important stories around the temples in Goa?
Okay. A lot of people, when they think of Goa, temples does not match in that algorithm. They just cannot, like, there are a lot of reels also that says, find someone who will not travel to Goa with you but travel to Vrindavan and this. But Goa was known as Dakshin Kashi, and Goa was an important place for Tirtha Yatra. And there are a lot of references, Indian as well as foreign, that people from all over the Konkan region would come to yatra to Goa. There was a temple of Sri Saptakoteshwar where a jatra would happen during Ashtami, and that was one jatra that it would draw people from many places, so that's why it was as important as Kashi. And Goa was also known as Dakshin Kashi. And though a lot of destruction has happened through various resources like literary sources that we know, the archaeological remains, as well as the documentation done by the Portuguese themselves. So, unfortunately or fortunately, one good thing that they did, every time they destroyed a temple, they did a panchanama for themselves. Okay, they wrote a detailed description of the temples they have destroyed, including of the panchayatin, so that they could send it back to Portugal saying, "Give me my increment now, I've destroyed so many temples." But that is very unfortunate for us because my ancestors went through that. But fortunately, when I'm speaking of this, I have some evidence which is written by the Portuguese themselves. So I have a credible evidence. Otherwise, it would have been lost in the air. So, despite of all the destruction in Goa, which is one of the smallest states of India, we have unique temples like we have Shanta Durga, which is the peaceful form of Durga, okay, which is unique. Then we have Brahma temple in Goa, which is there are very few Brahma temples, and there this Brahma temple is at least from the Kadamba period, that is around 10 to 12th century, and the murti is original. So during even when the destruction happened, a lot of people had to migrate as refugees, but they went with their main murti because they could not leave it behind to be destructed. So they moved with it's a Brahma temple is almost my height. It's almost like 5 feet or even a little lesser up in here, plus minus. So they moved almost 30 to 40 kilometers with that murti. That's the archaeological evidence that we have. So that is one. Third is Devaki Krishna temple in Goa.
Before you go to that,
With
I want to know a little bit on Shanti Durga because Durga's image is not, I mean, it seems a little counterintuitive. So, what is that about? Can you tell a
yeah,
little more?
it's so Shanta Durga or Shanta E is what we call. It is a Shantakari Durga. Basically, from there comes the word Shanta Durga. So there are two stories to this. One is that after killing Mahishasura, she had to calm down because she had the weapons and everything of all the major deities, right? So there's a lot of after battle you need to really meditate and get into the peaceful form. So there's a belief that she chose Sahyadri area, Ma Durga, and this is where she became Shant. So here she is worshipped in a very peaceful. If you see, there is one of the famous temples of. There are many Shanta Durga temples in Goa, but the most famous one you could say is one of the most famous ones is the one at Kavaran. So where there is a murti and it's like you will feel that murti is smiling. There's a beautiful smile on her face, and it's a complete at peace kind of a murti. So that is the form that we invoke her here in Goa. So that is one. Second story is that there was a fight between Hara and Hari, that is a Shiva and Vishnu, and Shivji got Pashupati's Astra. And if he had used the Pashupati Astra, it would have meant the end of the world. And they both were trying to prove who is the most powerful one. So Brahma ji came to Durga Mata, and she said, "You are the mother. You are the Adi Janani or Jagat Janani. please save the world from this, because this fight will create a lot of havoc. So she went, she interfered, and she turned them into babies because she is the supreme mother. And she picked them both of them, and they became like babies. One arm, it was like that's the story is about. At one arm she held Shiva, one arm she had Vishnu, and she made peace between them. So she is the Shantata Kari Durga. So that is one of the reasons. But here in Goa, she is without any weapons. She is in a blessing this, and she holds two serpents.
Okay, and then continue with the. I think you were talking about Devaki Krishna.
So Devki Krishna again, all over India or now even world, we see temples dedicated to Radha Krishna, for Gopal Krishna, even Bal Krishna, and various forms of Krishna. Even there may be temples of Yashoda, Maya, and Krishna, but there I don't think there is any other temple with Devki and Krishna. And the murtis also again, it's a very motherly form. She is in her, like the fine, that very sattvic form of motherhood. So where Devaki is holding Krishna on her lap. And the story is mentioned in Harivansh Puran, where it is believed like Krishna was near Goa while there was a fight going between Krishna and Jarasandha. And there's a parallel story that Devaki also came to Goa, Devaki Mata, and she came to Goa, and that was the first time she saw her own child, that's Krishna, and she had never got the opportunity to breastfeed any of her babies. So she has that motherly instincts, and that's why when she sees Krishna, her milk starts oozing out. Some even connect that with Dudsagar. I don't know how true, but when my, like when we heard this as stories while growing up, they said the milk is the what you see at Dudsagar. Okay, so there is one connection of that to the story. So then she, because for her, when the milk starts oozing out, Krishna becomes a baby, infant again for her, and she picks him up and feeds milk to him. So that is why we have a temple. It was originally in a village called Thodan, today also known as Shorao. The Portuguese destroyed it, and when they destroyed, people, the devotees of the temple left the place with the main murti, and they went to another place in Goa itself. They crossed a river and they went to Mahashail, or today known as Mashal, and that's where you have the temple now.
Okay. So moving to the history of Goa before the Portuguese, who were the major kingdoms and how long did they rule? If you can briefly mention about.
So the earliest record that we know, archaeological evidence, is of 3rd to 4th century, where Bhoja kings ruled here. These are not to be confused or mistaken with the Bhoj kings of Bhopal. They are different. Bhoj is a common name. Bhoj means king. So that's why there are many dynasties with the same identity as Bhoja. So these are the who were in the Konkan or Karnataka region. There was this Bhoj dynasty whose land record that we get, like there was a land donation. So there's a copper plate that was found which mentions about the first capital, which is in South Goa today, and that is the first record. After that, we were also part of the Chalukyas. Chalukyas were the dynasty from Karnataka. They ruled from their capital called as Badami. And after that, we get Shilaharas, which were also in the Konkan region. After Shilaharas, there was a major dynasty here, which is also known as Kadamba. So Kadamba dynasty we find in Goa and majorly in Karnataka, but their branch, the specific branch of Goa was called as the Gomantak Kadam. And during their period, Goa was also considered as the golden period. This is approximately from 10th to 13th to 14th century, okay, in different parts of Goa. So they did trade with Greek, they did trade with Romans, and there were different. They issued gold coins, and there are different hero stones which shows the naval battle. And after them, we were part of the Bahmani Empire for some time. Then the Vijayanagar Empire from Hampi. We were also part. So though Vijayanagar Empire was huge in Karnataka, they needed Goa for the port. And from port of Goa, there used to be the trade of horses. And Vijayanagar Empire used to import a lot of horses from Arabs. So that is why everybody wanted Goa. After Vijayanagar, there's again Bahamani for some time, which were the Muslim rulers. Then we have Adil Shah, which were again the Muslim rulers from Karnataka. And then comes the Portuguese. But Portuguese did not take on the whole of Goa at once. They could only take the first three talukas. That you could say 30% of Goa. Rest 70% was initially with Adil Shah and then with Marathas.
So when did they get the remaining portion?
Okay, so they came to Goa in 1510 and they took the first three talukas. They ruled here. That was where you see brutal Portuguese Inquisition also. And to expand to rest of India, it took them more 200 years. So literally 1740s onwards.
Okay, got it. And I think there was some war they fought with the Marathas also, right? Wasn't there a battle? Was that in
So the
Goa?
one reason, uh, there were wars in Goa. And they fought wars with Marathas even in Maharashtra, like Mumbai area, because even there close by Portuguese had their control. So if you see on Google, there's a map of the Portuguese conquest in phase one and phase two. So phase one, if they've taken the three talukas, the rest of the talukas, it's a small state, right? It could have been, like a month or maybe year or 2 year long expedition, and they could have taken it in the same time frame. Like shouldn't have taken 200 years, but they had to fight, with two people, that is Shivaji Maharaj and then Sambhaji Maharaj, which and this is a whole contribution to history of India. If it was not for Shivaji Maharaj and later Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj, uh, Portuguese would have spread to rest of India as well. They would have tried at least. So the Marathas, starting with Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, then Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj, and later Peshwas, they kind of kind of kept them at hold only in Goa and some parts like Mumbai, like including Vasai and some parts like Daman and Diu. Otherwise, this could have spread rest of India as well, but they had to fight, and this was like kind of weakened them a lot. They kept them busy here, and that's why Portuguese could not spread to rest part of India.
So, which are the main archaeological sites, especially of the pre-Portuguese period? And the other thing I want to ask you is, as a professional archaeologist, uh, how challenging is it to excavate in an area where evidence has been destroyed, at least visibly, right? So, how challenging is that?
So pre-Portuguese, we don't see many temples, or there's only one temple which is built in stone, which is called as Tamdi Surla. Tamdi Surla is the name of the place. It is a temple dedicated to Mahadev, and it's completely built in stone, and it's the black stone, like basalt. Rest of Goa, we used to use the laterite stone, and if it is abandoned, it's got holes, like it's a porous stone, so trees can easily grow through the stone because it's got holes inside. So sometimes, like even a banyan tree finds a place in the stone in a wall, and it kind of separates the wall with ease. So that is one reason we have lost lot of architectural elements and places to natural resources. Also, since we didn't have stones like say granite or sandstone and all that, which we have in the Deccan Plateau area, walls were either built using mud or using natural resources like wood. That is why, with time, they have been destroyed by nature, and then that is one reason. But we do still have caves. So there are Shaiva caves in Goa. There are rock art sites which are at least 6,000 years old rock art sites, which are prehistoric. So Goa is a place, even if there is one evidence, it is enough to mark its presence in a timeline. So we have rock art sites, we have cave temples, we also have Buddhist cave temples. Though there is not lot of murtis there of Buddha stories and all that, but even one Buddha murti is enough for us to know that there was presence of Buddhist, and there are also murtis of Jain Tirthankars that we have found in Goa. Then there are coins and land grants, which are copper plates that we have. So pre-Portuguese, there are some architectural elements here and there, or there are foundation stones at least, which helps us as an archaeologist. But you can't really do a huge dig like to find civilizational evidence. It is because of the reason the climate here. We have everything that is not suitable for an archaeological site. We have heavy rainfall, so everything, the topsoil gets washed away. Usually archaeological remains we find on the surface, so the topsoil gets washed away. Secondly, we have humidity, so even if there is any ecological remains, which we call as eco facts, they get destroyed. We are close to the sea, so a lot of salinity, the decomposition is faster even if there was any remains of skeletons or anything. Then there is restriction that has happened during the Portuguese time, and they have razed down each and every temple, each and every holy shrine. So even if there was a shrine of a see, not always we worship deities in temple, but we also worship trees, like any banyan trees worshipped, or any other trees like rumad, audumbar, which are trees worshipped as the presence of a deity. So they have even raised down any memory like that. So there are very few scattered sources. And on top of the raised down temple, they have rebuilt a church. So now the archaeological evidence is beneath the church. So until and unless you dig out, or there is any, say, like, any chance discovery, like it happened in South Goa, there's a church in a place called Navelim. So the compound area of the church was taken over for the road construction. And when they started digging for the road, they found temple remains. So that is one. Then museums, we find lot of murtis. Then there are people's homes who were converted. So inside the, in the backyards of their houses, they kind of, even though they converted, they didn't really want to destroy the murtis that were from their house. So they kind of tried to hide them in their backyard. So someday these resources will like reveal themselves to us, and we will have very strong proof. But now we are getting everything in jigsaw puzzles, one and two clues here and there.
Yeah. And I wonder sometimes, like what exactly does the archaeological survey do for, because many of the times these physical material that you find, maybe it's a farmer or a regular person in their backyard, what's the incentive for them to come out in the open and tell any authorities that, oh, this is something you never, because considering the black marketing and all these things, people might just want to make a quick buck. So how does the archaeological survey handle such a situation?
Um, Unfortunately, like the later version is what happens most of the times. There are different incentives of archaeological survey as well as of government of Goa, where they can acquire a site. A lot of times people, if they are connected and if they are aware of the value of it, like say any murti, they give it as donation to the museum, and where they are, it is named after them. If any site is taken over by the government, there is government rates that they get paid. But in the black market, and unfortunately this is what I've seen and heard in the whole of Konkan, there is a lot of woodwork which used to there, Hindu as well as Catholic woodwork. The Christians also have a lot of their icons, of their saints and Mother Mary or Jesus, unique ones, which are which you could say as a representation of Indo-Portuguese or Indo-European architecture. So there are kind of small groups and teams which go to villages and they start donating to the temple, and they keep telling them, they keep hammering in their mind, your temple shrine is getting very old. I will donate. I'm a builder or someone. I will donate some sand and all this, and we will get a nice bright temple built for your village, which they do, and people are happy because they're getting a new grand shrine, right? So they are very happy. And then they say, what are you going to do of this old pillar? They are anyway going to go waste. Can I take them with me as a memory or something like that? So people, most of them, this is what has happened. Now, of course, people have got aware, and they would take it and sell it in black market as antique pieces. But archaeology department is also creating a lot of awareness where people can approach them. But most of the time, sites are found usually in say road digging and all that, or if the news spreads, Goa is a very small place, so it really reaches fast to the media. So there is very rare chances of it reaching. If it's found in open, so if somebody is digging and they find a murti, there is emotional value attached to it, so they really don't want to sell it to black market, and the news reaches quite faster to media because of being a small state.
Okay. So coming to the important part, so when did the Portuguese come and how? What was the immediate change that happened in the aftermath of their conquest, like politically, economically, socially? What changed in the beginning?
Okay. So they came to Goa in the year 1510. They really didn't have any plans of coming to Goa for political expansion. Uh, all of us know that Vasco da Gama and Columbus both were on a mission to find India. So Pope literally divided the earth into two, the globe into two parts. Okay, you go south downside, you go upwards and find India because they wanted the spices. Spices from India would reach them in Europe via Arabs, and middlemen always mark up his own prices, his price. So Europe wanted to find India for the good quality of spice. A lot of time we get this question: what did they do of the spices? They came all the way to India, but their food is so bland. Where did they use the spices? So they really needed the spices to marinate their meat, like pepper was used to marinate meat for their sea journeys. So when they would go on a voyage, they would marinate their meat and it could be used as a very good preservative. They needed cinnamon from India and Sri Lanka. So they came all the way here via the sea route, and when Vasco da Gama reached Kerala, after Kerala, at the same time, they started spreading in and around for trade purpose. Okay, and at the same time in Goa, there were these Adil Shahs were ruling in, and the locals were not happy with his rule. So they learnt about this new people coming in the southern coast. So they decided, how about we go them and we call them, we invite them to Goa. And these foreigners had guns and they had a good different military. And we always, it's in our mind, I don't know from, long back that we kind of somehow looks up to the West people. And they invited them to Goa and they asked them, if you fight a battle with Adil Shah, you defeat him, we give you some, bounty back and we will give you trade permissions. You want to do trade here, you can also do it from Goa. So, and when Portuguese realized Goa is much better opportunity than Kerala, though there were good lot of spices in Kerala, Goa is like the mid zone. You can go south and you can also go north. And if you are getting any political area on a plateau, why would you say no? So when they came to Goa, they realized this, and the very people who had invited them, they said Tata bye bye to them. They killed Adil Shah and took over Goa by themselves. And they should have actually done is submitted to the people who had actually planned it. But Portuguese took over, and they had this, a rule that the king's religion will be the people's religion. जो धर्म राजा का वही धर्म प्रजा का. This is a typical European like the singular idea mentality that we see. As India, we were diverse, but they go everything in like this is there's only black and white. You have to go my way or highway. This is the mindset that they come from. This is one reason. Second reason is along with the Portuguese the people explorers on their expedition, they were Jesuits. So going a little back in time, who were the Jesuits? So Jesuits actually come from the Crusaders. Okay, so the Crusaders, who would usually go on wars, kind of gave up their weapons and the wars, and they started spreading the word of Christ through education. So there is usually a saying that the pen is mightier than sword. So education or preaching, but their background is actually from the Crusades. So that violence or the crusade idea, the war idea is somewhere there in their subconscious. And it is said that they funded the Portuguese expedition. So when they came here, when they came to India for the expedition, so there was a kind of two reasons. One is for trade of spices. Second is to spread religion, that is Christianity. So they had to convert as many people. So initially there are records of there are kings of India. We by default had this, okay, you want to practice your religion, though I am a Hindu, I will allow a Muslim king to practice his own religion. I'm fine with him practicing his religion, or him practicing whichever religion they might belong to. I will even help them. There are many records such of that in Goa where Hindu kings have helped build a mosque for the Muslim traders. There are references of Hindu traders have helped Catholics who had come here only for trade to build a church or a chapel for their prayers. So they were fine with that initially. And that's how they started slowly converting people. You want benefits from me? Convert. So maybe few people converted like that, what we call as Sam. Second is Dam, to any monetary benefits. Third is when they wanted to establish power here. And how else would you control people other than religion? You want to, because today they are practicing yours, tomorrow somebody else comes, they might even change their religion. Or it's not very easy to control the mindset till you go into their lifestyle and break it down to a level that they are literally on dependent on you. Because Portuguese who had started establishing their rule in Goa, they had found some resilience also. So they didn't want them to get together and attack back on them. So the best way to control was through psychology. And best way to control for psychology is the religion. And Christianity is very monotheistic religion. Like there's one God, one book, and like there's a strict set of rules. So that's how they started spreading. Initially, they started building churches in the empty areas, but they realized that people will not come to them till they show their power. And the way to show their power was destruction. So they started destroying the temples forcefully converting people. Sometimes they converted people with cheating, like they would come and put beef in the wells, and even the Hindus did not have unity. Like they would believe somebody's had water which had beef, he's converted now. He's done some pap. He's had water that had beef. So even he was socially not accepted. So that person would have no choice. Then go to the Christians. Third, they started with the rule: if you want to keep your property, you can only be a Roman Catholic. You want to practice Hinduism, fine, but you don't have any rights. You don't have property rights. You don't have any other rights to earn. So you live a life of a beggar then. So obviously, and that time land was their everything. There is no cash. So people started converting to keep their properties. But there are references of them saying, I'm going to convert, but I'm not going to change my caste. So till today, we have Roman Catholic Brahmins, we have Roman Catholic Kshatriyas, Roman Catholic Vaishavanis, and Roman Catholic Shudras. So the exact system that was there in Hinduism, and a lot of time we find narrative that people converted to Christianity because they were fed up of the caste system. If they were, what changed? Nothing changed. They just control C, control V. And Portuguese went to the deep down level that lot of people would convert. But back in their home, either because of the lifestyle, it's a routine, right? So if I'm used to pouring water or abhishek for tulsi in my garden, you can't just change it overnight. So I'm going to still do it, even if I change my religion or if I change my lifestyle. These certain things will be always there. So they went to that deep level that you are not allowed to have a tulsi plant outside your house. You have an altar, you want to pour water and you want to light a lamp there, fine. Remove the tulsi plant, put up a cross there. Now light whatever you want to light. Instead of lighting a diya, now light a candle there. So that is one. They even went like Hindus used to have bath in the morning, and because of which, after that they would do the puja. So now they want to break that pattern there. So they said Catholics or those who are converting, they were called as neo converts, are not allowed to have bath in the morning. You need to compulsorily have it in the evening. So breaking your lifestyle pattern, it went to that micromanagement level. Third is they started having sentinels in the village. Like how would a Portuguese, like if Portuguese officer comes to check, I'm going to present to him that I'm a Catholic, I'm a devout Catholic, and inside my house I will have my own puja rituals. So they said if I complain about person A that he is practicing Hinduism, he will be punished, and for which they established something called as the Inquisition. So Inquisition is a legal system, like it's like a court. So on a table they will be seated. It's like a tribunal, and where you have to present your case and all that. And this is all happening in Portuguese, the language people are not familiar with. Very few might have been familiar, but not at large. So you have to present in the language which you are not even aware of. So during the Inquisition, so they started having the sentinel scheme. If I complain about someone, I get to keep some part of his property. If any parents, like if any child was say orphan, that they said the state, as in the church, has the right to take him, and they would convert them and they would train them as the priests. So Portugal is a small country, they could not get a lot of people here. So they said we will keep the social system as it is. Only like there are people, there is a landlord, there are his staff, and his soldiers and all that. They just converted it to the Christianity. They just translated Konkani or the Sanskrit names or the positions to Portuguese or Latin, and rest they would only have one supervisor. Even the priest was to be only of white skin and of the European origin, but every under them the subordinates would be Indians who were converted.
Got it. There was something with regards to even cremation or something, right? Like uh, of their bodies.
There
Like
was something in regards to sati. There was so cremation by default you could not cremate. You had to bury them. That's the practice in all the Abrahamic religions. That is one. Secondly, it is everywhere it is said that we have to hail the Portuguese because they banned sati. The first governor who came to Goa, Alfonso de Albuquerque, he banned sati. Great. So everybody is like the typical woke narrative that we see is like they are so great they banned sati. And what did they do of those widows? They converted them as sex slaves for their soldiers. So everybody only reads the first line, that is they have banned the sati, but they converted them and used them for the soldiers to produce babies for their own empire here. So how is that even fundamental right? How is that even like liberal idea in any way? So that is one. And during the Inquisition, they burnt people alive. So there are records by the Portuguese themselves, those who would not convert, they burnt many, many people alive. So how do I give them the benefit that they were so great and so liberal that they banned sati when they equally killed more people alive? They burnt more people alive. They used to chop hands. We have a pillar in Goa which is called as the Hath Katro Khambo. So Hath Katro, by the name you can guess, it's the place where they would cut hands or chop hands of those people who would not convert. And it's a proper legal system. It's not like they are coming as an invaders overnight and they're burning people. It's not. It's a proper documented system. Unfortunately, they after Inquisition was stopped, they burnt all their records. But there were many more records which survived in some churches. So based on that, we can make statements like this.
so, my question here is: Inquisition was an international policy across the Portuguese Empire, and it was there in Portugal itself, right, and Spain. So, how does the timeline
And
in Goa
even in Spain.
versus yeah? So, how does the timeline? At what period was it happening in Portugal, in Spain, and in Goa? How does that compare? What is the nature of atrocities how, I mean, how far-reaching or wide-scale it was here versus there? Like just a comparison to understand.
Yeah. So it started first in Spain. Spanish Inquisition was much known. It was against the Jews. And when they came to Goa and they started spreading religion in the simpler ways, like Samdam, that ways, or little bit of punishments here and there. There are records of Francis Xavier. There's a book called Letters of Francis Xavier to which he wrote back to Portugal and to many others. So there's a compilation of all his letters. So his brainchild was Inquisition to be brought in Goa. So he said we did that in Spain, we should do that here in Goa as well. And he mentions about that these people are much, they're kind of rooted in their own culture here. That especially the Brahmins, that we have to destroy it. They say they are as black, and their murtis, that their icons that they are worshipping are even as black as them. And there are lot of detailed descriptions of the people here, and how like they stuck to their religion despite of many challenges that were thrown by the Portuguese. And so he invited the Inquisition to be brought in Goa. So it kind of went for at least 200 years, but at the same time they found resilience in some places. So there is one in what we can call as the first spark of independence that happened here in India, was around in 1543 in Konkolim. Sorry, in 1583 in Konkolim, which is a place in South Goa. So where the locals, the chieftains of the village, killed five priests who had come to preach. They said, "We are not interested in any conversions. If you want to trade with the village, you are welcome. If otherwise, we are not welcome." They're going to because they started destroying temples in other villages, right? So the news had reached these people. They said, "We are not going to entertain any such." So they started paying people that you arrange for our meetings and all that. So because of which they got into a fight with the local chieftains, and they killed those five priests. So then Portuguese called these chieftains to one place in a fort to discuss, like the peace terms. So in Indian war rules, it is like when you go for a peace term discussions, you don't go with weapons, and that is the kind of commitment that you would also expect from the other person. That is the Kshatriya dharma, which is what we see in all the our epics and our uh, different dynasties and historical records, that everybody followed some rules of war. So when this would happen, when they went to that place at the fort to discuss, Portuguese were ready with all their soldiers and everything, and they closed the doors and they cheated and killed these people. Only one person could escape, but he could not come back to his village because he didn't know how to react to that. But 16 of which 15 were killed. So this is when this happened. It kind of like sent a very bad signal to every other villages, and the resilience kind of went on a back foot. So this is one. Then a lot of battles with Shivaji Maharaj, then Sambhaji Maharaj and Peshwas. Peshwa battles happened even in Vasai, which is in Mumbai, near Mumbai. So that is where Portuguese got almost weak. They were really scared of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. They lost to him once, and they had to sign a treaty which included that they would stop their convergence. Of course, they started it back again in time, and there are mentions that there are letters of Portuguese writing that Shivaji Maharaj was building a fort in Goa, and they were really scared because that is the first time an Indian is building a fort right opposite to the Portuguese area. So there's a river. Right bank is the Portuguese area, their conquest. On the opposite, he's building, and that is the river where which the major trade would happen. So it's like they could guess that that these people are not scared of them anymore. And the person who was building the fort there on the orders of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, Portuguese wrote to him that you please stop the construction, or else in typical Hindi way, like mujhse bura koi nahi hoga. And this is the first time somebody is writing back to them. A Goan is writing back to the Portuguese that I am building it in my area. Who are you to even ask me? I'm not bothered about your permission. I am building it here on Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and his orders. So I'm not answerable to some that kind of attitude we are seeing. So after which Sambhaji Maharaj also came to Goa, and he had almost won over Goa, and he almost killed the viceroy. So there's an mention of the battle where he was about to cut the throat of the viceroy, but his slave saved him, and he got a cut close to his neck. So because of which they were really scared. This demoralized them. This used lot of their money in fighting battles. Later, during Peshwa times, there was a battle that happened in Vasai, Chimaji Appa versus the Portuguese, which was one of the worst battles for the Portuguese in India. So which demoralized them mentally. It kind of gave them heavy losses in battles. So, and then they had to focus more on the keeping their power, the political power intact. So their focus on the church lowered. At the same time, within the church, there were many sects, and they were, like you have Jesuit, Franciscan, Augustinian, and they were like there were cold wars within each other for power. So that also affected. And thirdly, the ideas of revolution in in Europe, which can also helped somewhat in Goa. Like because of those revolutionary ideas, the church and state separated. Like after French Revolution, it was more of a military rule, and military rule was more interested in political and trade with India, other than spreading the religion. So that's when we get to know that it stopped. So in Goa, it had started as with the entry of Portuguese, and I had initially mentioned that Francis Xavier was the one who imagined, or it was his brainchild, that Inquisition to be brought in Goa, but he did not live to see the Inquisition. He wrote letters not once but twice to the King of Portugal asking for the Inquisition, for the permission, but he died even before it started. So it started in 1560s.
And when did the Inquisition end finally?
It is around the first years of 1800. So I think around 1810 to 1812, that
So
time,
around the
to 19th
Napoleonic
century.
time when Napoleon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it had kind of affected the ideas of separation of church and state, and the dynasty-based rule. That the ripples effect of that we get in Goa as well. So we see that the Inquisition weakened in the 18th century, and by the time of the 19th century started, it ended officially.
Okay. So finally, this is a very like to just hear these stories is very like it's just to imagine them is so difficult to have lived through them. I can't even imagine the pain. How do you think the memory of the Inquisition survives in the common population in Goa today, and how has it shaped their worldview and their culture and their outlook in general today? What impact does it have today?
So you can't really study history of Goa or any aspect in it, positive and negative, without studying the Inquisition. So you cannot really do, like let's forget it, because that's the base for everything, right from the food to the migration. So why are all the temples in one area? Because they all migrated. Why did they migrate? Inquisition. Why are Hindus behaving in certain way, Catholics behaving in certain way? Their customs and rituals. The background to it is the Inquisition. The food pattern, the background is Inquisition. The language, during Inquisition time, even Konkani was banned. You could not speak in Konkani for official reasons. You could not read in Konkani. Any books or any manuscripts that people had were all burnt down by the Portuguese. So that also, so anything that you want to study, even architecture for that matter, you have to study. The base of history is the Inquisition that happened, because it's not just 1 or 2 days or 1 or 2 years, but it's almost a span of almost 1560 to 1812, which is quite a lot of time. And everything, the migration, lifestyle, everything has base of that. So that is one. But what I've noted is the youngsters, the people of today, though our ancestors have gone through it, we remember it, but there is no very, like, there's no vendetta memory. Everybody accepts it, but it's hardly spoken in the schools. Nobody speaks of it in the detail. So maybe that is one of the reason nobody understands the magnitude or the intricacies of it. Usually in the schools it's spoken like it's kind of whitewashing or brushing under the carpet. Like, okay, the Portuguese were there and they started destroying and then people migrated. So when you speak it like that, you don't really feel bad. It's like, okay, any battle, it happens. It's justified, and that's a typical narrative. If you read a book called Avaran, written by S.L. Bhairappa ji, that is what, it's like slowly it's created, that the veil is created, the Avaran, or the kind of a cover where a lot of perspectives are brushed under the carpet. And it is all, done with very slowly. So when you get into the details of Inquisition, like my ancestors, they were in an area called Shirodwadi, which is in today's Parvari, and they went to Bichole. And I had interest in history and reading about it. So as kids, we knew that this temple was, as a matter of general knowledge, that temple existed here and then it shifted. I've realized now that I'm making reels and everything on Instagram where I'm sharing details of this, shifted temples. A lot of people are writing back to me that they never knew about this. Even though they are visiting the temples, they had never heard of this, or they had faintly heard it. Like, okay, it migrated. And those who have not imagined or read the details, the migration feels normal for them. Okay, like, we were staying in Mumbai, now we stay in Pune. That's easy how migration is. So they can't really imagine that it is the migration for reasons like you have to leave your everything and you have to go live and live a life of refugees. Today, the temples that shifted once, overnight with nothing in their hand other than the murti of the Devata and maybe some other religious significant objects, like any Utsav murtis or anything like that. But today they are one of the grand temples. Their devotees have rebuilt the temple in equal grandeur. There are palanquins of gold. There's a temple dedicated to Sri Damodar, which migrated from Madgaon to Zambavli, and today it went overnight as a refugee, and today it has a palanquin of gold. The devotees have rebuilt it. Most temples have rebuilt it with all the grandeur. So, person visiting it today, especially the tourist, cannot really imagine the pain and the history that is in the past. So that is one. And when you speak in details of, say, Inquisition, you realize what actually the pain that our ancestors went through. When we are sharing it, all these details of Inquisition and what happened, it is not with the idea of any vendetta. We don't want to take revenge on the Christians of today because they are the ones who suffered it more than my ancestors, equally like what my ancestors went through, even their ancestors went through. Because sometimes there were families with, say, four boys, two would convert, two would leave, two would leave overnight because they thought, you stay back here, take care of the property. In case this Portuguese go back, we will also come back. Something like that. So our ancestors are same. Both have went through the equal this, and the Inquisition happened not. It did not happen on the Hindus. It happened on the Neo Catholics because they were not being Catholic enough. So those who wanted to remain as Hindus, like my ancestors, they went from their place overnight, and they lived life of refugees in other place. They went and stayed with their cousins, say even in Maharashtra, Goa, even right up to Kerala. Some even went to Madhya Pradesh later during the Maratha period. So they found their way. But those who converted, but not they were not practicing all the the rules. They were the ones who faced the Inquisition. They were the ones who were burnt alive. So it is the equal pain the Hindus as well as the Catholics share. And whenever we are speaking of history, it's not from the idea of vendetta, but it is like, please do not try to whitewash it. Do not try to whitewash the crimes. Let's call spade a spade. Let's speak about evidences. If they have destroyed, fine, they have destroyed. So we should not try to carpet it.
Yeah, that's a very valid point you made because uh, I think it's the responsibility of today's generation to remember what their ancestors have been through. I mean, that's the least I think we can do. And, you know, I mean, that memory is
And
what,
also the struggle to rebuild it.
yeah, exactly. And the rebuilding of it, which thankfully you've said that a lot of it has happened now. And a lot of those sites, at least not in their older form, but in the new form, are there for people to go and see. So it's a very somber note to end this podcast, but hopefully the viewers of this podcast would have gained some information and knowledge about this, because not too many people uh, outside Goa, as well as I think inside Goa, know the the graphic details of what actually happened. So I think it's a very productive session for everyone to know about this. Thank you so much, Savani, for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so with that, we come to the end of the show. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, signing off.